such as more esoteric, these indexes of credit default swaps, it dials us all the way back to the financial crisis when we all had to learn about these things, these relationships among various short-term rates. Hopefully we're not there, and the Fed obviously has been somewhat proactive about some of the very, very unnecessary or just strictly mechanical dislocations in the short end of the money markets.
Charlie, just wanted to come back to you. I mean, we're seeing, obviously, we're near session lows again as we approach the close. You talked about some of the stocks you like and you have been buying. What do you say to someone who hasn't got cash in their portfolio at the moment? Should they sell some bonds to make use of these opportunities, or how do people fund it if they haven't?
So if you have a portfolio with a lot of 10-year bonds, I absolutely would say short, sell those, absolutely, because I still think we have a bubble in longer-term bonds. We've already seen that back up when 10-year rates got to 45 basis points. Now they're at 90. So a lot of people have lost some money already, but we still think 30-year bonds, treasuries, 30-year treasuries, 10-year treasuries should be sold. Go into cash if you're afraid of the market, or use some of that money to buy some clearly oversold stocks.
We have got last chance trade coming up with Charlie. He'll tell you the specific stock you should be buying today amid this massive sell-off. Coming up, closing bell, Alpha One Capital's Dan Niles will join us, his market strategy amid the volatility, and if any names are starting to look attractive to him. 19 minutes left of the session. Here's a check on the closing bell big board. Energy, the worst performing sector today again. We could have said that every day pretty much for the last month or so. There's a look at some of the biggest laggards in the energy sector. The likes of Marathon Oil down an enormous 27%, adding to lots of recent declines. I mean, all of those declines there, more than 15%. The energy sector itself on the S&P 500 is down 12.2%. The S&P itself down 7.8% with 18 minutes left.
All right, so Charlie, what is your last chance trade?
So this one's going to be a little different. This is Progressive. And full disclosure, we own the stock, but I'm also on the board of State Farm. So this is a business that I like a lot personally, and it's going to do better. It's one of the few industries that will actually have good results over the next 3 or 4 months. As there's less driving, accidents go down, and I'm predicting that the combined ratio, which is basically the inverse of the margin, is going to be lower for Progressive. It's a stock that's held up already reasonably well, but only at 10 times earnings. It's a growing industry. It's going to continue to be a growing industry. It's a business that I like a lot.
It's down 15% over 1 month. You compare that to some of the other, like Allstate, for instance, is down 30%.
That's right.
Over that same period. Allstate also has a lot of exposure to auto insurance, especially. What do you specifically like about the auto insurer and then Progressive that its competitors just aren't?
So again, like State Farm that I'm on the board of, Progressive is focused on the retail business as opposed to the commercial business, which is going to be more challenged. You're going to have corporations going bankrupt. There's going to be corporate events that are going to be tough on some of the insurance companies. But a Progressive is really focused on the individual auto and home market, which is growing. Progressive's business is growing more than 10% per year.
Yeah, the insurers are really feeling the pressure from all sides, not just the anticipating increased claims because of coronavirus, but also this rate environment, which has been a problem, continues to be a problem. And the insurers had gone for some higher yield investments, equities, and look what the equity market is.
Not a problem at Progressive. Progressive does not have that investment portfolio that some of the other people do.
Great. All right, here we go. We have 18 minutes left, 17 minutes left in the trading day. Now in the closing bell market zone, commercial-free coverage of all the action going on into the close.
Charlie Babinskoy is still here from Ariel Investments, and of course CNBC senior markets commentator Mike Santoli here to break down all of the crucial action of the day. Let's kick things off with the broader markets. We are down at the moment 8.2% on the S&P 500, just over 2,000 points on the Dow. The low of the session on the Dow is 2,255. Mike, is it a concern to see us really gap down 6% from the peak of the session after that repo announcement?
I don't know if it's an incremental concern, but it fits in with the broader character of this market, which has been sell first, sell constantly, and sell in an undisciplined way, because honestly, it's basically people just trying to get out of the way of a vast unknown. The information deficit that we're facing here when it comes to the fundamentals is obviously making itself felt here. And I mentioned before, if you want to look at the extremes in the very short term in terms of how washed out the market has looked, you really do have to start going back to the 2008 period. I don't even think 2011 counts anymore. And what that really means is people in a wholesale way backing off the markets. Now, did it slow down as the day went on? Kind of, a little bit. I said we sort of hung around this 2,500 level, the S&P. Is that significant? I don't know, because it has not been fruitful to extrapolate any day's action to what's happening the next day in this last 2 or 3 week period.
Let's bring in Tom Lee, managing partner at FundStrat. He joins us on the phone now. Tom, you have on a couple of days in recent weeks called for people to buy that we were due a bounce. Would you do that today after 2 massive days of declines that puts the S&P down about 17% this week?
Wilford, it's been tough because, this is a market that, as you guys are saying, it's not about price discovery, trying to link with fundamentals. It's a market trying to price in an increasing amount of unknowns because of Corona and oil. And so I think our calls were way too early about trying to buy this dip because, it's been, as Michael said, relentless selling. I mean, we've now had 7 days where 90% of the volume in the S&P was down. I think on Monday it was 99% of the volume, and I think today is probably 100%. But it doesn't mean that the market won't find its footing. And the reason I think we're going to find some sort of footing is, number one, over the last 10 days, 75% of all trading volume has been down. And it's even worse than what happened in 2008. So we've really created a type of liquidation, and with a speed that, has basically broken everything. So I do think markets can pick winners and losers, and that's what I think would make a lot of sense. And I think that's what investors should start to do.
When you're looking at the timing of this and trying to figure out how the market might react to the news headlines, why, Tom, are you looking at the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, where fundamentals were at play, as opposed to something like 9/11 that was this abrupt, very emotional, very scary event that sent investors fleeing?
Yeah. I mean, I think both have a place. I mean, I think the reason 08 kind of makes some sense is that there is like a second narrative here where there is stress developing in the actual financial markets. That's why we've had so much Fed intervention, and I think that was less the case in 2011. But the difference between both is really that we don't really know how well containment will work. I mean, I think it's actually quite good that the public is quite growing in their nervousness about coronavirus because the social distancing will help limit, the spread and then limit the overall economic impact.
for the drive to close. I think a lot of people are going to be happy to see this market close today. It's a brutal one in the red, as you just heard Charlie break down. Let's turn to a true market expert, J.J. Janahan, Chief Market Strategist for TD Ameritrade. $1.3 trillion in assets under management they are looking after. He joins us on the phone from Chicago. All All right, JJ, I was reading some commentary that you made to our colleagues, I believe, Sunday night going into Monday. What a week it has been. How do you take stock of it at this point, given everything that we've seen, and especially today?
Well, as you said, I think a lot of us will be anxious to see this day be over. And it's not only red, it's bright, bloody red, because it's really been an ugly day. And I think that the volatility is going to continue. The biggest issue in this market is compared to some other things that we've lived through, be it, 87 or 9/11 or even last year with the tariffs, is those events had sort of at 9/11, a few days after, unfortunately, it happened, but at least it seemed like it was over, so to speak. We could get on with our lives. Tariffs went on, but there were dates associated with things. There's no date associated with this, and when there's no date, that makes people very nervous. It's a huge unknown. Unknowns usually mean selling things. And so the biggest thing is you're trying to reassess the value of every stock in the market right now, because you don't know how the quarterly earnings are going to be affected, and earnings drive stocks. Everything's happening at the same time with no known date of when you can say, okay, this is over, so now that these companies can sort of get back to business.
Yeah, I do wonder, as an investor, what you want to hear from policymakers, lawmakers, from leaders. I mean, what's interesting is I think there was an assumption yesterday with all of the bank CEOs there in the White House meeting with the president and his team that there would be some concrete policy coming out of it. What we did hear is that the bank CEOs, at least, telling the president this isn't a financial crisis. I get that. Yet we didn't necessarily get specific policies to maybe shore up various industries. What do you want to hear, JJ? What do your customers, your clients want to hear in terms of policies to kind of at least stem the fear and the selling off?
Well, I think, most of the things you want to hear at this point, Carol, we can try all the business stimulus you want. I think the biggest thing we could hear is actually from the medical community, in that we have some way of mitigating this. Bar that, everything else we do will have some effect, but I still think that'll be the overlying. People want to hear there's some medical sort of solution. Again, I think the government just continuing to show stimulus as much as possible to show that they're on it from a medical end will be the best thing that can possibly happen. The reason this is sort of different, and I always hate saying, this time's different, but I think this time is a little bit different because it's something that it's easy to personalize. You can understand, the tariffs were very sort of a gray area. Mm-hmm. This is easy for every single person in the United States to personalize and say, if this happens to me, I know exactly what can happen, and that makes me really nervous, not only for my family, but for what can happen to my business.
Well, who was it that we talked to, Jason, yesterday? I believe it was, or earlier in the week, that just saying, this is, a fear situation, and folks are saying, I can die from this, and this is how do you control that? And you're right, you need to hear from the medical community.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully we'll start to hear more. I also think, I'm coming on talking about the market. I think people have to be a little selective about what they hear also. When people ask me, I've had other people ask me medical questions. I'm like, I'm not a medical. My wife is. She's a doctor. She's pretty smart. So much smarter than I'll ever be. Talk to her. But, when people come on who are business people and try and talk about medicine, you have to be a little bit careful also.
Absolutely. So are there things that you're advising folks to do from an investment perspective? I'm not asking you for medical advice.
No, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that toward you. So
No. I'm teasing. I'm trying to make just bring a little bit of levity to it.
You're right.
But from a market perspective, what do you say to people who may be, going to the mattresses here and saying, sell me out, I'm bunkering down, because that may not be the best advice here?
And I think you bring up a great point, and that's usually the worst possible thing you can do. At least history shows us that. What I tell people is, listen, we always hear, don't be emotional, blah, blah, blah. We're all emotional about money. If that wasn't the case, the number one sort of source of marital strife wouldn't be money. That all said, when it's your money, you take it very personally. What I would tell people is to think in partials. If you can't take it anymore, don't say I have to be all out. Sell a small percentage if you feel you must sell something. and you can reassess. And I think the biggest difference that separates, or two things that separate professional and retail traders. Number one, having a time frame in mind, and number two, thinking in partials rather than all out and all in. And this is a time to really think in partials, whether you're buying because you see great opportunity, or whether you're saying, I have to sell because I can't stand the pressure. This is the absolute time more than any other to think that way.
Yeah, I do think, this is where if you didn't think about it before, what your tolerance is for risk, you're certainly getting a harsh lesson at this point. I do wonder, though, and I've been asking this to a bunch of our market guests, JJ, is how much of this sell-off would you attribute to just concerns about the virus, which are legitimate concerns? How much was, safe to say the market was overvalued? We were looking for a reason to sell. Probably not this much, but we were looking for better valuation. 2/3 of the market sell-off, would you account to the virus? How would you do it? How would you break it down?
Yeah, I think, Carol, you bring up an interesting point. I think this all started last week particularly. Yeah, a little bit of the fear of the virus, but more so, we're maybe a little overextended in some people's eyes, so starting to sell that way. As we come into days like today, I think the script has flipped a little bit to be primarily about a sense of fear of what this actually means. Now, you look at the bond market reaction today and you're trying to figure out what's going on there, because remember, the bond market rallied long before the stock market went down. Bond market not really responding to the upside today is a little bit strange. I mean, I know there's some obvious pressures with what the Fed announced earlier today, but there's still a disconnect, it seems. So we'll see which side is right. We know the stock market has a tendency to overshoot things to both the upside and the downside.
Right.
So hopefully there's something that we can hang our hat on that as the week progresses.
Well, and what I will say is right now we've got the bond market and the treasury market, the bond market, forgive me, and the equity market both selling off in tandem. I mean, we've got the 10-year now moving up to just about, just under 0.9%. We were much lower on that 10-year yield. So there is some dislocation trying to understand this trade. JJ, thank you so much. I know it's a hectic time. JJ Kinahan, Chief Market Strategist at TD Ameritrade, $1.3 trillion in assets under management. JJ joining us on the phone from Chicago. Folks, just about 3.5 minutes left.
The starting gun for your weekday race. Karen Moscow.
Airlines could soon be under pressure.
Nathan Hager.
Apple has reversed course.
Bloomberg Daybreak, beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000. which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
yet. You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Steep losses for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Folks from Quadratic Capital ringing that closing bell as we await the latest numbers out of Broadcom and Oracle. Yes, a down day for the U.S. stock market, but those losses intensified during the final few minutes of trading. The S&P 500 index ending the day down 260 points. That was a drop of 9.5%. Dow Industrials down 2,352 points. Worst level of the day, down by 10%. NASDAQ down 750. That was a drop of 9.4%. 10-year down 132nd, looking at a yield of 0.87%. But carnage on Wall Street, steep losses, and red on the screen for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. J.J. Kinahan is Chief Market Strategist at TD Ameritrade. He was our guest moments ago, right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
It's not only red, it's bright, bloody red, because it's really been an ugly day. And I think that the volatility is going to continue.
Starbucks outlining measures it may take to help prevent the spread of coronavirus, from cutting down on seating to closing some locations. Starbucks shares lower today by 9.1%. A rough day for a lot of the cruise line stocks. Again, Carnival Corporation, for example, plunging 31.2%. Royal Caribbean, that's the parent of RCL Cruise Lines, shares down by 31% as well. And Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings lower by 35.8%. Not just the cruise line stocks, certainly travel stocks also hit hard today among some of the global carriers. Delta, for example, down 21%. American Airlines Corp down by 17%. Domestically, we saw Southwest down 15%. JetBlue lower by 15%. Recapping steep losses for the U.S. stock market, gold down 4%. S&P down 260 points at the close. That was a drop of 9.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Oh, yeah, what I say.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle.
Damn, Sippy, you got some moves. And I'm moving from town to town.
Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, time to talk a little bit about the market. I got to say, for those of us who have been covering financial markets, business news for a long time, and we've seen some ups and downs, and these are one of those days, mark it on your calendar, March 12th, 2020, because we had some strong statements and some strong market moves. You heard Charlie Pellet talking about it. The Dow average falling 10%, biggest rout since 1987's Black Monday, long time ago. S&P 500 sinking into bear market, ending the record long bull run. That's one day after the Dow Jones Industrial Average also officially fell into a bear market. So here it is, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, sort of taking it all in and understanding the magnitude of this, both in terms of the end of the bull run, which, we had talked about for a long time, that these bull runs, they don't end. They don't die of old age.
And nobody would have called that it was going to end this way.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's a true black swan event in a lot of ways. You can say that we were headed for some sort of correction, but as you say, I'm not sure anybody saw it quite this way. I do want to bring you Oracle coming through with earnings. Third quarter adjusted revenue coming in at $9.8 billion. That's a beat. The estimate had been for 9.76, boosting its buyback to $15 billion.
Well, these are, companies are going to be taking moves to kind of shore up their share price, and you can buy it back. A lot of stocks certainly at beaten up prices. Oracle closed the day at $39.79. Stocks up 3% here in the after hours. So, that is certainly interesting to see that headline. Their cloud services license support revenue, $6.93 billion. Adjusted operating margin, 44% versus the same year over year. And their third quarter adjusted EPS, 97 cents a share, 1 penny better than what Wall Street was forecasting. So, there you go. Some earnings there in that stock. Really, I bet on that buyback news is higher. I do want to mention the one name. You pointed it out in the S&P 500, and it wasn't this way like a minute or a couple of minutes ago heading into the close.
There was another name. There's been basically like one or two names the entire last hour that were trading positive, but the only winner,
Occidental. It's your number one gainer in the S&P 500. Your only gainer in the S&P 500, up a hair, up 0.75 percentage point. The story that obviously you've been hearing on Bloomberg is that activist investor Carl Icahn saying today he expects oil prices, they'll rebound in the near to medium term, and that, quote, strong bids will likely emerge for Occidental Petroleum. So, he has boosted his stake in the Permian Basin oil producer to about almost 10%. So he's one of the company's largest shareholders. He wants to replace the board. And of course, we know the share price has tumbled following that big acquisition that it did of Anadarko last year, $37 billion. So there's some movement talk on this one. So maybe no surprise to see it higher in today's session. But it just kind of squeezed that out at the close.
All right. Among your worst performers, a lot of travel-related companies, cruise-related companies. Your worst performer again. This is a name that has just gotten destroyed. Norwegian. And I have to go back to when we were in Miami. Right. We interviewed the CEO, Frank Del Rio. Nice guy. And at that moment, that was less than 2 months ago. Right?
Just leading up to the Super Bowl.
The Thursday before, he was talking about the virus. He was talking about how it was really, limited to Asia. Some of his competitors were being affected. I think he was feeling pretty good. And I think he was feeling confident about his business. That stock, NCLH, it is down 83% this year, down 36% today alone.
Royal Caribbean also down. So Norwegian is your number one decliner in the S&P 500. You're right. I can't even get my head around the numbers. Down 36%. Royal Caribbean, that stock, your second biggest decliner, down almost 32%. Carnival is down, third biggest decliner. It is down more than 31%. So, seeing a lot of names that no doubt about it, in the hospitality industry, in the travel industry, and we know it. Nobody's taking trips, and they're getting hurt. They're on the front line of all of this.
Certainly no one going on cruises. We are awaiting numbers from Broadcom. AVGO is the symbol there. We're going to catch up on those numbers with Anand Srinivasan in just a bit. Let's take a look at the VIX.
The VIX.
Because, whoa.
It closed at 75.16, folks. We haven't seen that level in some time. It was up 39%, up more than 21 points. Again, the VIX closing at 75.29. No surprise, a stock sold off in a big way to see VIX spike once again. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door. It's Dave.
Who?
Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Dave Wilson here with his stock of the day. What you got?
I've got a stock that's up. Let's start there.
Tupperware Brands, the company that makes products for cooking, baking, and especially storing food. The company sells directly through Tupperware parties in which salespeople meet with friends and show them what's available. Tupperware was founded in 1946 and went public through a spinoff in 1996. The ticker is TUP. The shares peaked in December 2013 and plummeted the past 2 years as quarterly results have brought disappointment. Now, Tupperware was due to report fourth quarter figures on February 25th. That didn't happen because an accounting investigation at a Mexican beauty product unit wasn't finished. Today, the company said the probe was closed and the accounting issues didn't have a material effect on its results. Now, Tupperware also named 2 new top executives who have direct selling experience. One of them is Miguel Fernandez, who will be CEO. He's a former global president of Avon Products. The other is a former Herbalife CEO, Richard Gudis, who will be vice chairman. And in response to all this, Tupperware shares surged as much as 39%. They closed with a gain of 20%, the biggest since August 2007.
Did they? My terminal's saying they closed down 13% by the close. Did they kind of sell off maybe into the close a little bit?
That's what I got. Tupperware, ticker TUP. Well, I guess it's how you count it.
All right. Even so, big rally, still down a lot for the year, but fascinating to hear that story. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Let's get a check on world and national news headlines. Off to Ed Baxter we go in San Francisco.
All right, Carol, thank you. Major League Baseball has canceled spring training, has postponed opening day for at least 2 weeks. U.S. top infectious doctor, Anthony Fauci, admits the testing system is failing.
It is a failing. I mean, let's admit it. The fact is, the way the system was set up is that the public health component that Dr. Redfield was talking about was a system where you put it out there in the public and a physician asks for it and you get it.
He says it's a failing, although the president says things are fine.
Frankly, the testing has been going very smooth.
And the administration is catching some heat as well from EU nations regarding his statements about travel bans last night. Bloomberg's Guy Johnson.
I think the Europeans are not happy. Remember that the UK and Ireland are excluded from this, but nevertheless, no consultation, no commitment to a kind of two-way street on understanding how we are best going to deal with this.
He says an exact opposite of cooperation. It has sparked a rush to get tickets before the ban takes place, although again the administration says there may be some revisions in plans. Meanwhile, both New York State, California State have banned large public gatherings. New York Governor Cuomo.
To reduce the number of people in contagious environment, no gathering with 500 people or more.
And in California, Gavin Newsom.
Sporting events, other types of conferences, music festivals, and the like.
Yeah, now, so in New York, this does affect Broadway shows are closing. In California, it affects sporting events. It affects all kinds of different theaters. Global news, 24 hours a day, available on air and on Quick Take in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over
over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
At Asda, with our great range of beers and cider, it looks like you're hosting. Get 2 packs for just £18 or just £10 each. Like 12 bottles of Corona or 10 cans of Copperberg Cherry. Cracking brands, refreshing prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money. Live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Offer ends 18th of March. 330 millilitres each. Drink aware.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to, like, the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But, like, for an unbelievably good price. Yeah? Yeah. And I want it where I could choose the length for my own contract. Yeah!
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost. Direct only. Device plan of 3 to 36 months. Refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited. Terms apply.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we'll ask whether America is ready to elect a democratic socialist for president. Plus, the science fiction legend William Gibson on climate change and the end of the future.
How often do you hear the phrase, the 22nd century? Don't hear it. We no longer have that sense of cultural anticipation.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Number of developing after the bell headlines to pass along. We begin in New York City, where Mayor de Blasio has declared a state of emergency. L Brands just announcing Sarah Nash as chairman. Oracle reporting adjusted revenue for the third quarter that met the average analyst estimate. And
And Broadcom reporting first quarter adjusted EPS of $5.25. Estimates there were for $5.34. Broadcom shares, they're moving lower now by just about 4%. But again, 0.4%, I should say. Worth repeating the headline, though. Here in New York City, Mayor de Blasio declaring a state of emergency. Carnage on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all plunging today. Those losses intensifying in the final few minutes of trading. S&P down 260, down 9.5%. The Dow dropped 2,352 points, down 10%. NASDAQ was down 750 points, a drop of 9.4%. Benchmark gauges posting their worst drop since 1987 as investors signal the Fed's extraordinary bond buying measures and President Trump's economic proposals won't be enough to counter the economic impact from the coronavirus. Gold down 4.1%, $15.67 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 6.5% at $30.85. And this additional headline to pass along to you, NCAA canceling remaining winter and spring championships. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is one of those that's going to go down in market history. Dryden Pence is back with us, Chief Investment Officer at Pence Capital Management, on the phone from Newport Beach, California. So, Dryden, I do want to talk about the markets and get your take on it. Tell us, though, from Newport Beach, California, what's going on when it comes to virus concerns?
Well, here in Southern California, you have a range of options. Some of the schools have announced closures, some have not. Some of the universities have announced closures, some have not. So it's not a uniform reaction. And also, we really haven't had a large cluster of cases or anything. So I think everybody's kind of reacting in this abundance of caution. And so I think that there's some overreaction, but schools are closing, a few things like this, but it's not uniform. So some are, some aren't, and I think we'll see this kind of work its way out over the next couple of days.
And so,
wait, what do you mean work its way out? You mean that you'll know more cases, or what?
Well, I think the point is we still don't know how many cases there are and how many cases there aren't. And I think everybody's kind of doing stuff in anticipation. But I think the thing that we have to realize is that some people are going to just kind of continue on, because 80% of these cases are very mild. And people don't even know they have it, for that fact. And I think that we have to recognize it is very important. I think sometimes this gets lost, Carol, and everybody kind of looking at this thing, is that basically someone who gets it is well in 14 to 18 days. And you see kind of the half-life of this thing is about 14 to 18 days. And in China right now, they're pretty much done. They're finished. Their period of time was about a 60-day window. They're about 30 days past peak. At 45 days into the thing, you had more people getting well than sick, and now you had 7 or 8, maybe 12 people sick today, and that's it. And so this thing is over much quicker, I think, than everybody's thinking. And I think this is why we're having this tremendous overreaction.
Dryden, I do want to stop you there for a second, because, one of the things that is being talked about a lot is that one of the reasons it did sort of curve like that in China is because of some very draconian measures that the government took, measures that have not been taken in this country. And so one of the questions that has come up is, does the U.S. look more like what happened in Italy versus what happened in China or subsequently in South Korea?
I think we're probably certainly closer. This is my opinion, but we're probably certainly closer to a South Korea event than an Italy event. And the reason why is we now have a whole lot more data points than we did 30 or 60, 90 days ago. We now have 100,000 people that have been sick. We know how long it takes for them to get well, and we look through this. This doesn't mean that there aren't some people that are going to get very ill. This doesn't mean that there aren't some people that are going to face mortality off of this. But the numbers are relatively small. So people who are at risk should be very, very careful. But people that fall into the other cases of it, probably they're already kind of overreacting, which in some cases I guess you could say is a good thing. But the point is, from an economic standpoint, when we see a market that's down 9% in one day, I think we have to step back and realize that if it's 30 to 60, even 90 days from now, the U.S. economy isn't 30% less than it was a few weeks ago, 90 days from now. And I think that we have to recognize that there is going to be this return to normalcy as soon as people can get past this. And again, that's not that long of a period of time. People are acting like this is a major structural issue, which it is not. They're acting like we're headed into a massive recession, which we're not. All of these kind of things, I think the market's just overpricing this fear that people have. And that's what we're seeing.
What do you have with, I just saw a headline cross with Angela Merkel describing this crisis, though, as extraordinary. And specifically, whether or not there's overreaction or not, we're seeing it play out certainly in the credit markets and a tightening of financial conditions. That can lead to real carnage when it comes to companies, no?
It does put things at risk. And the real the real risk we have now is this cycle of fear feeding upon itself. And that's why it's very important that I think that what you will begin to see, hopefully, is that every day for the next couple of weeks there's going to be some policy announcement, because monetary policy did something today, it went up and then down. And then we're going to have to look at some fiscal policy activities. And there has to be some people out in front of this to talk about, to begin to calm this. But also, if you look historically, though, when we go back to the sell-off in 2018, we went down to about these levels, and then 81 days later we were back. So it's not just a question for how deep is this sell-off, but also what does the recovery look like? Is it V-shaped? Is it U-shaped? Is it square root shaped? Those are the things we have to look for. So I'm focused on what's next, not what's happening.
Right, but people worried more that it could be more of a U-shaped recovery, which takes a little bit longer time.
Right.
Jordan Pence, thank you so much, Chief Investment Officer at Pence Capital Management, joining us from Newport Beach, California. And as we were talking to him, we had a headline crossing, Extended Stay America withdrawing its 2020 guidance over the virus impact. That stock alone down more than 55% this year. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Things haven't been this bad on Wall Street since 1987. Stocks sold off with the S&P 500 plunging 9.5%. Investors are signaling that the Fed and the government need to do more to counter the economic impact from the coronavirus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged nearly 10%, 2,352 points. The S&P 500 dropped 260. The Nasdaq Composite sank 750. Major Wall Street firms are trying a plan to stagger employees' visits to the office. Workers are being separated into two groups, one in the office and one working from home, rotating each week. Firms trying the arrangement include Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and BlackRock. Times are tough for Airbnb even without the coronavirus. Sources say the home-sharing company lost $276 million in the fourth quarter, nearly double a year ago, even as revenue rose. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. In-depth analysis.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we'll ask whether America is ready to elect a Democratic Socialist for president. Plus, the science fiction legend William Gibson on climate change and the end of the future.
How often do you hear the phrase, the 22nd century? Don't hear it. We no longer have that sense of cultural anticipation.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to get a look at the chip sector through the eyes of Broadcom. It obviously is an incredibly global industry and very important to both consumers and businesses. So we'll take a look at that.
We will indeed. All right, let's get back to your top business stories because the headlines, man, they just keep crossing. Charlie
They
Pellets.
certainly do, and we are on top of it. Got to begin with this headline. Breaking now from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Walt Disney Company closing Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure. That news breaking moments ago, but worth repeating. Disney closing Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure. Stay with Bloomberg. The headlines are coming fast and furious. We've got them covered. Earnings news. Oracle reporting adjusted revenue for the third quarter that met the average analyst estimate. Broadcom, a chip maker that supplies Apple and other large electronics companies, withdrawing its annual sales forecast and gave weak near-term guidance. Again, developing story. We've got more on the Broadcom Broadcom story for you coming up in just a moment right here on Bloomberg Business Week. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all plunging. Benchmark gauges posting their worst drop since 1987 as investors signal the Federal Reserve's extraordinary bond buying measures and President Trump's economic proposals won't be enough to counter the economic impact from the coronavirus. Mike Swell is co-head of Global Fixed Income Portfolio Manager at Goldman Sachs Asset Management.
So obviously from a personal standpoint, this is taking a massive toll on everyone. But I think when you think about your portfolio, you have to look out 3 to 5 years. And so we're telling investors that obviously you have to re-look at your portfolio, make sure you have the right asset allocation, and then rebalance, number one, and number two, be calm.
And this additional headline to pass along to you from the Bloomberg Professional Service. BT Group CEO Philip Jansen has tested positive for the coronavirus. Apple says it's closing all 17 of its retail stores in Italy. Apple shares lower today by 9.9%. And Twitter escalating its coronavirus response by mandating that all employees must work from home. Recapping, Walt Disney Company closing Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure. Stocks lower the 10-year. The yield there now 0.82%. Gold down 3.9%. West Texas Intermediate plunging by 6.3%. Just going to recap the equity numbers here. They are big and ugly. If you are long in the market, S&P down 260 points today, down 9.5%. Dow Industrials down 2,532 points, a drop there of 10%. And NASDAQ lower by 750, a drop of 9.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. So let's check in with Anand Srinivasan now, senior semiconductor and hardware analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, looking at the numbers from Broadcom, an important chip maker, not surprisingly, pulling their annual sales forecast, weaker second quarter demand. Help us understand what we heard. Anand, you're joining us on the phone, I should mention, from New Jersey, not here with us, as you often are.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on. Look, I mean, the 10% year-on-year sales guidance for 2020 was a foregone conclusion that it was unviable. Remember that this is a company that is a roll-up story, and they have acquired a lot of different semiconductor pieces along the way, everything from RF chips and Wi-Fi chips into the iPhone to networking components that go into enterprise routers and telecom routers, to infrastructure software, the former CA. So they've got a whole host of assets that give a strong view into different parts of the enterprise and into the consumer. And that view, early look at it, is that it is not good, right? So we've always known that 1Q was going to be weak, and it's unsurprisingly weak. And 2Q was that it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment because the production and China being offline will have impact on that, both on the production side as well as the demand side. But they're taking their 2020 demand or guidance off the table indicates that we're in a period of heightened volatility and that we can't really make a conclusion as to what 2020 might end up looking like. And I think that is a very telling sign of how the year is going to shape up.
No, I'm sorry, Anand. I hate to interrupt you. I do feel like what you just said. I mean, we're talking about how so many companies don't have any visibility, but for them to come out and say, this is it for the year, we know this. And as you remind us, this is not just a supply story or conversely just a demand story. It's hitting a lot of companies on both sides.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, one of the things that we have done over the last couple of weeks is taken a really hard look at all the companies that we'll cover and drastically trimmed our expectations for 2020. The notion that this is going to have a sudden snapback, a very sharp snapback in demand in the second half to more than offset for the first half, that story is gone, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, can 2H 2020 have some sort of a salvaging view that we don't have this level of weakness continue through 2Q and the all-important 3Q? And that's what we're hoping for. And at this point, it's too early to tell. But we're hoping that a combination of demand stability as well as supply side return to manufacturing and return to product assembly will help sort of weather the storm. But again, too early to tell. But 10% sales growth for Broadcom, no way.
Yeah, and so how does this sort of square up with what you're hearing about the supply chain, about from other names, like consistent? Like what's the general feel?
Right. So the interesting thing is, look, we've always said that 1Q is that 1Q is a done deal. 1Q is gone. So the question is, do we have utilization or factory utilization come back in the month of April, May, and June? And those are the three key months for me, because if you don't have high production capability in those 3 months, then you touch July, August, and September, which is the period of high demand for semiconductors. In order to deliver product in those 3 months, you should have a completely unimpacted workforce and factories in the second quarter. And to be quite honest, it's a little too early to tell. We are snapped back in China manufacturing for sure, but we're still at a level that I would feel uncomfortable if this were May or June.
Right. All right. Anand Srinivasan, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Senior Semiconductor and Hardware Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence.
I just want to mention, in addition to Broadcom, Slack was also out with its earnings after the closing bell, and their sales forecast missed estimates. The stock is now down almost 21% in the after hours. All right, time for another check on world and national news headlines. Out to San Francisco we go, and Ed Baxter. Hi, Ed.
All right, Carol. Hi. France President Emmanuel Macron doesn't have good news. Says order the school system closed from nursery to university the beginning of next week, saying, quote, "This is the epidemic of the century." U.S. top infectious doctor Anthony Fauci has admitted to a congressional panel today that the nation's testing is failing.
The idea of anybody getting it easily, the way people in other countries are doing it, we're not set up for that. Do I think we should be? Yes. But we're not.
Although the president is saying testing is going smoothly and he's not even going to get tested, although he may have been exposed during the visit of the Brazilian president. His press attaché has tested positive. EU not happy about the president's announcement of a travel ban. Bloomberg's Guy Johnson says top administrators were caught off guard.
This was a unilateral action taken by the White House at a time when global financial markets and global politicians are calling for coordination. This was the exact opposite of that.
President Trump says it was just about timing.
We get along very well with European leaders, but we had to make a decision, and I didn't want to take time.
And he says things will be fine, but Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli says there is confusion about what the final ban will be. He says there's also a mixed message coming out regarding what kind of work will go on in Congress now.
They're also calling for there to be some type of congressional vehicle, bipartisan congressional vehicle with an economic package, whether that's a stimulus, whether that's a tax break. We just don't know at this point.
Now, Congress, crowds have been prohibited from the Congress building, from the Capitol, but Mitch McConnell has come out and say Senate will be in session, and New York and California governors have now set limits on large gatherings. Broadway shows have been suspended. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown, today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to stat pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seizechange.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Lots of after-the-bell headlines. Great reason to keep it locked into Bloomberg Radio. The Walt Disney Company closing Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure. Peloton canceling its May homecoming event. Broadcom withdrawing its prior annual guidance because of the impact of coronavirus. And in New York City, Mayor de Blasio declaring a state of emergency. All of this as the U.S. stock market craters. S&P 500 index down 9.5% today in a bear market, dropping 260 points. Lots of those losses coming really in the final couple of minutes of trading. The Dow plunged 2,352 points. That was a drop today of 10%. NASDAQ down 750 points, a drop there of 9.4%. 10-year up 22 30 seconds, yield 0.79%. Gold, no haven there, down 3.7%, 15.75 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 6.1%, 30.97 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser, here with you. And in studio, Pat Regnier, Markets and Finance Editor for Bloomberg Business Week. Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, back with us as well. And these were the guys who made the decision and then executed it to do a takeover edition of Bloomberg Business Week. It's all about the lost year. I believe there was a question mark, maybe, that we thought about. No, I don't think there's any question mark anymore. We thought about it.
We removed the question mark, though.
Exactly. I remember talking to you about that earlier. It feels pretty certain that that's what this is going to be. Pat, I want to start with you. Take us inside. Help us understand the decision-making and what you set out to do.
We felt like we could see something coming. And we felt like we weren't sure we were paying enough attention to it, and we felt like maybe the world and decision makers weren't paying enough attention to it. And every day as we began to build this story, the feedback we were getting was, keep moving on this, keep building it. People need to hear about this and start making decisions about it and get moving.
Talk to us about how you kind of prioritized the coverage. Yes. Because this is a story on so many different angles.
Yeah. So, people come to Business Week with an expectation that we're going to tell them about what's happening in the economy and business. So we started big. We started with the macroeconomic, looking at these economic effects, and we move on to what governments are doing to respond, looking at businesses, and then getting to what we're really seeing now, what's happening to people, what's happening to us. And then we're all really trying to get our heads around what's happening with the virus. So the last section is about the virus and what we know about it. And we're really frank about what we know and what we don't.
Macro to micro, meaning that microorganisms.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a lot in here. Basically what we did was just take what we normally do and throw it out the window and went hardcore special issue. This is the only thing that anyone is interested in right now. What do we know about it? Where are things going to go as best as we can say? And we really tried to do that in a way that felt like one part explainer and zeitgeist and just one part like business. And business, I think right now, as we're seeing it everywhere, there's massive uncertainty. And yet there's like these little funny moments like Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas, what does Vegas do right now? Well, there's a trade show as it happens.
Amazing.
And every 3 years this trade show happens, and that
construction, right?
That show had to go on. They were in the middle of it and they just did it. And we happened to have somebody who was going to be there. And so we literally have this boots on the ground moment at a trade show. And, you just have to think that there's not going to be any more trade shows for a while. But we kind of got that feeling of like what it's like to be there. And then there's these amazing human stories that we were able to get out of China and Italy that were about what it's like to live through this. Tehran, which is like another place that's just like, all of those things are like ones that I think from the outside looking at it, we're all wondering because it's coming.
Well, tell us a little bit more, because that is, we do macro stories so well when we talk about the global economy or the global business environment, but you did, really dive down into personal stories, whether it was in China or elsewhere, Pat.
Yeah, one of the stories that, a lot of people are talking to us about is a story out of China, reported from a reporter in Hong Kong who was contacting people through social media to find out what was really happening there, and she then spoke to a family that's really been devastated by the virus. A woman whose mother died and her grandmother died, tellingly, a lot of what was driving that story was the lack of hospital beds and just the inability of this family to get the care that they needed in the midst of this outbreak.
Well, and the scientific, we've been talking about a lot about this. I mean, the scientific element to this, I feel like we all learned a lot reading it and talking to you guys. Can
we talk about
this? Yes. That's exactly where I'm going.
I was just checking.
I know. I mean, this element.
Not any mice, by the way.
Not just any mice. And that's the important part of this is there's special mice that the world actually needs to figure out how to treat this in humans.
Right. I mean, we just have a race for research resources everywhere. We talked about this earlier. We had two different stories where we had people in labs saying we are working 14, 18-hour days. This is a story about literally physically exhausted researchers around the world working at companies, working in government agencies, working in universities, all kind of trying to chase answers to this problem. And our reporters really found compelling ways to show how that chase is going, to track this down.
I do wonder, because I do feel like, Pat, as each day goes by, we watch the market sell off. We don't get necessarily definitive plans and programs from policymakers as much as maybe individuals and investors would like to hear. I do wonder, in telling the science story, how hard was it to get all the information? Was it out there? What did you get some conclusion? Are we far away from really figuring this one out?
I mean, it seems like we're still in very early days. I mean, we have an infrastructure. The people who are going at this, they've been looking at these looking at these problems for a while. So Bob Langerth has a profile of a scientist who had kind of a decision-making point in his career, sort of which disease will he go after, and he was looking at coronaviruses. He thought they were interesting at a time when people thought of the coronaviruses as like, well, they'll get the cold, you know. And he began to notice that these viruses can jump from animals to humans, and they can mutate, and they can move very fast, and he put his career into it. And now here he is, playing a part in
Thank God for that
chase.
man's curiosity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
Right, totally.
And so Joel, what did you take away? I mean, you sort of set all this in motion. You work with Pat to sort of pull it all off. As you looked at the final product today, I mean, it really is amazing to look at. The photos are pretty amazing. The three covers from the region. What did you take away from it?
Well, first of all, I was just really proud of our team to really come together on this, and Pat was just instrumental. But I think everyone's working from the same place, which is we're scared a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't know what this is going to be like. That uncertainty kind of fueled our curiosity because we just kept looking for more and more insights and more layers to kind of pull back. And look, I think you can see it in the markets, and that's a pretty good little version of reality right now. We're just trying to figure out what this all means, and this was our best shot at giving you the best information we could as the story sort of unfolds in real time.
Well, it's a must-read. Jason and I typically at the end of our taping for our weekend radio and TV show, we talk about what should we read, and we're like, just read the whole issue because it's everything you wanted to know. Pat Regnier and Joel Weber, thank you so much for doing what you did in the issue.
All right, and for those of you listening in New York and San Francisco and watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, we're going to continue right here. If you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in D.C., Sound On with Kevin Cirilli is coming up next. More ahead here on Business Week. This is Bloomberg.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance? What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. If you're a climate change skeptic who doesn't believe all those scientific projections about what's to come on planet Earth, how about some facts and figures about what's already happened? The World Meteorological Organization is out with its annual State of the Global Climate Report, and it says an estimated 22 million people were displaced by extreme weather in 2019, up from 17.2 million the year before. Among other findings by the specialized United Nations agency, a dry spring in the Horn of Africa followed by a wet fall caused an outbreak of desert locusts.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
All new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down day on Wall Street, lots of after-the-bell headlines. Let's begin with Amazon buying the Lord & Taylor building in New York City for $1.5 billion, this according to the New York Post. The Walt Disney Company says it's closing the Disneyland Resort in California on Saturday through the end of the month in response to the spread of coronavirus in the most populous American state. That move follows California Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order banning gatherings of more than 250 people. After the we heard from Oracle. It topped analyst estimates for quarterly sales, signaling that demand for the company's cloud services is holding up in the face of an economic slowdown caused by the coronavirus outbreak. And Broadcom, a chip maker that supplies Apple and other large electronics companies, has withdrawn its annual sales forecast. It also gave weak near-term guidance, demonstrating how deeply the coronavirus pandemic is hurting demand. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all plunged today in a week that brought the wildest market swings since the financial crisis. Today, investors got hammered with something crazier, a 10% drop in the Dow, the end of the longest bull market on record and the biggest sell-off since 1987's Black Monday. S&P down 260 points. That was a drop of 9.5%. The Dow plunged 10%, down 2,352 points. NASDAQ down 750 points, a drop of 9.4%. 10-year of 20-30 seconds yield 0.80%. As for the market backdrop, Megan Green is a senior fellow at Harvard Kennedy.
The saving grace of this incident versus 2008 is that the markets have really been operating, they've been functioning normally at a macro level. At a micro level, however, you hear, particularly in the credit markets, the bid-ask spreads are pretty big, and that there are signs that actually liquidity is pretty scarce. And so if this does continue and we end up turning this into a financial crisis, whatever President Trump said last night about it not being one, it's not just yet. It could become one.
Another rough day for airline stocks. Delta, for example, plunged 21%. American Airlines Group down 17%. Southwest Airlines down 15%. JetBlue plunged 15.3%. Gold right now at $15.75 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 6%. Recapping, steep losses on Wall Street. S&P down 9.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
The spread of the coronavirus adds a new and substantial source of downside risk to the global growth.
What really matters, of course, is not the epidemiology, but the risk to the economy. So we saw a risk to the outlook for the economy and chose to act.
We decided on a comprehensive package of monetary policy measures.
In terms of forward-looking, I will just note the statement that the bank will take all necessary further actions.
All right, and that was a series of comments that we have heard just of late from the world's central bankers and leaders of economies. Christina Lindblad is here. She is Global Economics Editor for Bloomberg Business Week, a key hand in putting together this week's special edition of Bloomberg Business Week. All about from an economics perspective, Christina, what did you set out to do?
Well, it was tough. We're literally a moving target. We set out to look first. We started with China, which is the epicenter, and asked how quickly can China get back to work? Does it have answers for the rest of the world and how you beat this, at least from a business sense? Then we started looking at sort of what are central banks and governments doing? Can they work together? In many countries, they don't have a tradition of working together. We looked at what could happen in credit markets if there's contagion from that source. With the 2008, for example, we saw toxic mortgages have this cascading effect. This time we looked at the potential of corporate debt, which is at historically high levels right now. And I'm trying to remember. There was so much.
Let's unpack those two stories, because those are two big ones. And I think you know better than most, Christina, that we're all constantly going to China, and we can't necessarily compare ourselves apples to apples when it comes to China and their handling of the crisis, but that's where it all started. And I'm watching tweets and various stories come out, the trajectory in China. Can we draw some conclusions? The question is China really bouncing back at this point? We're seeing stories, we're seeing things about workers going back to work, but do we really know what's going on in terms of getting back to normal in China?
Well, actually, being able to tell is not so easy, because there's been historically a distrust of government figures. So analysts put together these sort of dashboards using all of these proxy indicators. From those, you would think that it was, because one of them, for example, is use of thermal coal, the coal that used to make electricity. So people have usually looked at that to sort of tell how dynamic the economy is. And that has been picking up for sure. But then people found out that governments were telling factories that they had energy consumption goals that they had to meet. So factory owners, some of them who didn't even have full staff in their factories to actually, go back into production, would go in, turn on all the lights and run their machines just so they could hit those goals. So.
And I want to talk about this leverage question, if we can. The debt side, we talked a little bit about it earlier in the show, but I feel like, candidly, we haven't spent enough time on that. We know that these high levels of debt on the corporate side, this is different from the financial crisis with housing and consumers and things like that. This corporate debt has been looming out there as something that folks have been worried about. And as we sort of cascade through what is certainly a crisis at this point, how much danger is there in that side of the market?
Well, that market, high yield debt, has grown enormously in the last 10 years. I mean, Jay Powell, the Fed chief, has discounted the idea that it could set off a massive, event like we saw in 2008. But still, the IMF and others have pointed to it as a source of concern. So the concern actually centers on the idea that some companies may be shut out of credit markets, in which, they may not be able to roll over debt. They may not be able to borrow for investment. They may have to do layoffs. So then that would amplify. May not be enough for those corporates alone to kick the U.S. into recession, but it would certainly amplify any downturn.
Right. And if you're a worker working for a company with a highly leveraged balance sheet who can't tap the debt markets when they need to, we talk about, the outcome of all of this. If a company shuts down, right, and they lay off workers, well, then it becomes, certainly when you think about the economic story of what's going on right now, it becomes a different economic story.
Right. It's layoffs and also companies pulling back investment, which we've already seen happening. It hasn't been strong enough yet to tip the U.S. into a downturn, but it certainly has happened because of the trade wars. So this would be another reason that companies would not be spending.
We've been talking a lot, too, about some of the private equity headlines that come across in terms of what private equity firms are doing. And we talked about, was it Blackstone specifically, recommending to their portfolio companies, the companies that they own, that they should tap their credit lines, right?
Well, and also from a private equity perspective, thinking about the private credit market, which has grown so tremendously, and that may be an area that steps in during this part of the cycle.
That's right. There is a place. This is a place that companies can turn to. But again, I mean, if there becomes, everyone is going to that same sort of lender of last resort, let's say, private equity also has exposure, and they're going to be picky, about who they make loans to.
Got a last question for you. Just got about 30 seconds here. It's been quite a week, and we talked with Joel and we talked with Pat Regnier, who oversaw the coverage. You were talking constantly with your team on the economic side of things as the story evolved. What's your final takeaway? And I know the story is long from over, but as we sit here on a Thursday afternoon, just about 30 seconds, what's your takeaway?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have answers. What I'm really stunned about, I think, is what other people have said, is we didn't see this coming, not from this place. Yeah. And therefore, we don't have answers. We don't really know what works.
All right, Christina Lindblad, thank you so much. The economics coverage, always great. This really framed it, I think, in a way that helps people.
To be quite honest with you, when you said that, because we didn't see this coming.
We didn't.
Not the magnitude of it.
And raises a lot of questions, but also helps give us at least some roadmap to what this may look like going forward. We really appreciate it, as always. Global Economics Center for Bloomberg Business Week, a key part of this week's takeover.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly. We do want to get you back to World and National News headlines, and to Ed Baxter in San Francisco. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Carol. Okay, Disney, I have more lists for you. Disney's announced it's closing Disneyland in Southern California Saturday through the end of the month. France President Emmanuel Macron has ordered the school system closed from nursery to university the beginning of next week. In the U.S., Major League Baseball has canceled spring training, has postponed opening day for at least 2 weeks. NCAA has dumped all basketball. That kills March Madness. The U.S. top infectious doctor, Anthony Fauci, admits the testing system for coronavirus is failing.
It is a failing. I mean, let's admit it. The fact is, the way the system was set up is that the public health component that Dr. Redfield was talking about was a system where you put it out there in the public and a physician asks for it and you get it.
Although the president says things are fine.
Frankly, the testing has been going very smooth.
And the administration is catching some heat from EU nations regarding statements about travel bans last night. Bloomberg's Guy Johnson.
I think the Europeans are not happy. Remember that the UK and Ireland are excluded from this, but nevertheless, no consultation, no commitment to a kind of two-way street on understanding how we are best going to deal with this.
Meanwhile, both New York State, California have banned large gatherings. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
To reduce the number of people in contagious environment, no gathering with 500 people or more.
That affects Broadway shows closing down. In California, Gavin Newsom says it affects a number of things.
Sporting events, other types of conferences, music festivals, and the like.
Yeah, I mentioned to you that Disneyland is shutting down on Saturday. Global news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter.
Ed, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Massar here with you on a Thursday afternoon, fast-moving, to say the least. And I have to say, one of the things that a lot of us are thinking about, probably a lot of people listening and watching right now, is about colleges, either where you went to school, where your kids are going to school, how they're dealing with it. We talk so much about the cost of higher education and all the machinations around that. These schools scrambling to figure out what are the logistics and the impacts of the decisions that they've made over the past few days about essentially ending the school year.
Hey, Mom and Dad, you're going to get a refund probably, at least from some schools so far. Harvard, Princeton, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. We're talking about so far rich universities who have massive endowments. They are among the schools that plan to prorate room and board costs as the coronavirus has forced them to send students home. I know we were getting ready to do a college trip, and a lot of colleges that we were going to go to said, don't come, please. We're shutting down. What's interesting for students and their parents, great reporting by Janet Lauren. Often you hear from Janet on our own air. a little bit of a breather, right, from the cost of education, even if it's for a quarter of the school year. But what's interesting is you do wonder about potentially a bit of a financial squeeze for the schools because, you know what, they set out their budgets, they plan their years, and there's expected money coming in. They still have overhead costs. So, there will be an impact on some of these universities. As I said, most of them have some pretty deep pockets that they can pull into.
They do, although I will say the economics are radically changed by this entire virus. You think about the NCAA tournaments being canceled. Obviously, the NCAA basketball tournament, that is a huge moneymaker. That is the biggest single source of revenue for the NCAA, March Madness. So schools are affected by this, and so both the revenue and the cost side all sort of...
If you're a college town, man, you're going to feel this in many, many different ways. So again, we continue to assess some of the costs of the virus. You're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg.
And Bloomberg Business Week is brought to you by the Jewish Communal Fund. JCF's donor advised fund is a smart choice to manage your philanthropy. Open a JCF fund now to lock in a 2020 tax deduction. Visit jcfny.org.
Life. It's a funny old game, isn't it? 1 minute you're on top, the next, you need all the help you can get. So make sure you're there for those around you. Don't just be a spectator. Be a supporter. Bleed for life. Join us at blood.co.uk.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that.
Skip, you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
The government has coordinated and streamlined its coronavirus messaging, but is it the right message?
What's really necessary is for the people in the government who don't know the details to stop telling us things like there will be a vaccine in 1 year. Stop it. That's not helpful.
Making sense of the noise and the silence on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
And broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Bevel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard?
or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Steep losses on Wall Street just about 3 weeks ago. The S&P 500 index was setting records. Today, it is smoldering 27% below those highs. S&P plunging 260 points today, down 9.5%. Dow Jones Industrial Average lower by 2,352 points. That was a drop of 10%. NASDAQ plunged 750 points, down 9.4%. 10-year up 20-30 seconds, yield 0.80%. Gold up 0.3% right now at $15.80 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 6%, $30.99 a barrel. Lots of after the bell headlines. Oracle topped analyst estimates for quarterly sales. Broadcom, a chip maker that supplies Apple and other large electronic companies, has withdrawn its annual sales forecast. And the Walt Disney Company says it is closing its Disneyland resort in California on Saturday through the end of the month. Recapping, stocks plunge. S&P down 260 points, a drop of 9.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg.
So I have been the beneficiary of this company's good work. Their look. We're talking about Great Clips. The CEO is here. Steve Hockett is his name. He's based out in Minnesota in the Twin Cities area. He's here with us in New York City today. Steve, great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How crazy is it for you? I'm just going to ask you, how crazy is it for you guys right now?
It's really crazy. It is.
I saw your team in our green room, and they're like, we've been nonstop 24/7.
Yes, we have. And we've got 4,500 salons across the U.S. and Canada. The franchisees, they employ 40,000 stylists. We do over 2 million haircuts a week. So there's a lot of moving parts that we've got to manage as we represent the Great Clips brand.
Are you shutting down?
Not yet.
Are you shutting some down?
What we want to do, the reason I'm here in New York, we're headquartered in Minneapolis, is we preach balance and calm. We also want to be smart and forward thinking, and we want to be nimble. And I wanted to come out here rather than saying, hey, I'm going to avoid New York City, because that's what we talk to our franchisees about. We want to do the right thing, but we want to have what I call an agile mindset to what a good decision today may be a different decision tomorrow. And the decision I'm making for tomorrow may have to change by tomorrow night. And that agile approach is key, as we're a retail business. And people have to put their hand in our door handle to come in. But at the same time, we are going to be careful, and we're going to be our customers. We want to protect our stylists. We have that care as an element of who we are, and so it's a balancing act.
Right. Well, and let's take it a step further. In addition to people putting their hand on your door handle, getting a haircut is a pretty intimate act, dare I say,
yes.
There's a lot of human to human contact. It's something, in the age of social distance that we're worrying about. You also have a franchise system. How do you sort of ensure that everybody's doing the right things?
Well, on the first point on the social distance, it is interesting to hear people talk about stay 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart. Well, a haircut, you're zero.
Yeah.
I mean,
good luck with that, right?
Yeah, right. So we cleanliness, sanitizing. I mean, that is a big part of what we have done since our start. It's what all hair salons do. I mean, our stylists are very skilled at the cleanliness and sanitization because we do that every day. We are ramping it up. How do we do more? How do we have more diligence, do more of that now? But that's a key thing. So, Jason, as we work with our franchisees, we explain that, but we give them tools, and we have a big communication going out literally in the next 40 minutes to our 1,200 franchisees, and so how do we communicate with them and give them tools so they can deal with their staff and be pillars in their community, but yet be smart about this whole situation.
Hey, I got to ask you, Steve, one of the conversations we've been having here in the newsroom is, okay, so what do you do? You know, some of us work for companies where if we stay home, we're going to get paid. And there's no problem about that. We can make the mortgage, we can pay our bills, no matter kind of how long this goes on for. A lot of workers are hourly workers that if they don't show up, they don't get paid. So I'm curious, tell me about your policy that you want a sick worker to stay home, but they might not because they know they need to come to work because they can't afford not to. So what are you doing to ensure that workers who maybe should stay home do? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and it's what we're faced with. We have great jobs in Great Clip salons, and as I said, we have 40,000 stylists, but they are hourly wage workers. That's just the great jobs, but they are hourly wage. So that is that balancing act I'm talking about, where they want to work because they don't want disruption, but yet there is disruption, and there's epicenters around the country, and we work with franchisees. How do they move staff between their salons if they can? How do they kind of handle reducing hours possibly rather than just laying off people? How do they manage and work? Because when this passes, they want to ramp back up. Right. So the goal here isn't for franchisees. They're not just saying, I'm going to get rid of employees. They're struggling with it because they want to keep employees. They know that their livelihood is based on being paid, but tips are down. And so
But you don't have a policy to say, listen, you're sick, you can stay home.
We do.
And we'll pay for you?
Well, the franchisees, see, again, we have the layer where the employees aren't Great Clips Inc. employees. In a franchise system, they're the employees of the franchisee. So we work with the franchisees to say, hey, if your employees are sick, suggest they stay home. They have to do that. That's the smart thing to do. But the employees have to admit, hey, I'm not feeling well. Right. I mean, we don't have, franchisees aren't taking temperature. So,
but will the franchisees pay them if they stay home?
Some of them will. Okay. And I know some of them are doing that. And that they're saying, I want this employee to be a great employee, and this is unfortunate that they don't feel well in this situation. So how do I keep them? And some will absolutely pay their employees in a self-quarantine or stay home, because frankly, we have more customers coming into our salons, and the first 10 months of this year have been awesome. Best first 10 weeks, not months, 10 weeks than the last 4 or 5 years. And now this coronavirus is going to take the edge off, but we know when this passes, if it does, 60 days, 90 days, 5 months, customers are going to come roaring back because
but
we're
business
normalcy.
Is off a lot.
We're normalcy. Don't know that yet. Okay. Through last Friday, and the Great Clips business weekends on Friday, we've had a great start to the year. Do I expect that this slowdown? Well, you've heard all the cancellations today. I mean, Ohio even closed their schools this afternoon. And so that's going to have an impact, and we do not have our heads in the sand.
All right, we got a lot more to talk to you about. Stick around. Steve Hockett, CEO of Great Clips, here with us in New York City, based out in Minneapolis. We're going to talk about some sponsorships that they have going for some events that aren't going to happen. So we'll get into that business in just a second. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here in New York City on Bloomberg.
The starting gun for your weekday race. Karen Moscow.
Airlines could soon be under pressure.
Nathan Hager.
Apple has reversed course.
Bloomberg Daybreak, beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Things haven't been this bad on Wall Street since 1987. Stocks sold off with the S&P 500 plunging 9.5%. Investors are signaling that the Fed and the government need to do more to counter the economic impact from the coronavirus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged nearly 10%, 2,352 points. The S&P 500 dropped 260. The Nasdaq Composite sank 750. Major Wall Street firms are trying a plan to stagger employees' visits to the office. Workers are being separated into two groups, one in the office and one working from home, rotating each week. Firms trying the arrangement include Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and BlackRock. Times are tough for Airbnb even without the coronavirus. Sources say the home-sharing company lost $276 million in the fourth quarter, nearly double a year ago, even as revenue rose. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. Tune you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
The government has coordinated and streamlined its coronavirus messaging, but is it the right message?
What's really necessary is for the people in the government who don't know the details to stop telling us things like there will be a vaccine in 1 year. Stop it. That's not helpful.
Making sense of the noise and the silence on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
Spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up.
Hello there, and we begin with the Walt Disney Company closing the Disneyland Resort in California on Saturday through the end of the month in response to the spread of coronavirus in the most populous American state. That move follows California Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order banning gatherings of more than 250 people. Oracle topped analyst estimates for quarterly sales, signaling that demand for the company's cloud services is holding up in the face of an economic slowdown caused by the coronavirus outbreak. Broadcom, a maker of equipment, chip maker that supplies Apple and other large electronics companies, has withdrawn its annual sales forecast. It also gave weak near-term guidance. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde today unveiled a calibrated package of monetary measures aimed at, quote, surgically supporting key parts of the euro area economy hurt by the coronavirus outbreak. In her statement, Lagarde warned of, quote, a major shock to the prospects for global growth.
Even if ultimately temporary by nature, it will have a significant impact on economic activity. In particular, it will slow down production as a result of disrupted supply chains and reduce domestic and foreign demand, especially through the adverse impact of the necessary containment measures.
J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, who underwent emergency heart surgery a week ago, has returned home from the hospital and is recovering well, according to the bank's co-presidents. J.P. Morgan Chase shares plunging along with other banks today, down 8.2%. UPS has named longtime director Carol Tomei as its new chief executive officer, replacing David Abney in a surprise move. UPS shares down today by 2.1%. Recapping, the 10-year up 20-30 seconds at yield 0.80%. S&P down 260, a drop of 9.5%. Dow Industrials down 2,352, down 10%. NASDAQ down 750, a drop of 9.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Still with us, Steve Hockett, CEO of Great Clips. And Steve, I'm guessing you thought, wow, we've got these great partnerships lined up. NHL, people love hockey. You had a really cool hashtag hockey hair thing going on, promotion that leverages social media. March Madness, best time of the year. Well, here we are. No March Madness. NHL suspending its season. How do you react to something like that?
It's really interesting. It's moving so fast because yesterday the NCAA was doing no fans in the stands, and when we started,
which isn't ideal, but okay.
Yeah, but we could work with that. And the NHL hadn't suspended their season, and then by a little bit ago with the NCAA canceling March Madness, we're done. We'd love both of those entities, those groups, the NCAA, the National Hockey League, what they represented to our customers, because our customers are their fans, and their fans are our customers all across the U.S. and Canada for both. We're excited to launch this NCAA March Madness partnership, and it's really a multi-year relationship with all NCAA sports starting now. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but we understand because the health of the fans, the health of all the athletes in both sports is really key.
Well, it's a reminder that, we try to figure out the costs of the virus, and we understand when events don't happen or you don't take a trip or so on and so forth. But, this is kind of ancillary in terms of revenue generating, for you guys, but it's going to impact it.
Sure, because you do these partnerships and these sponsorships because you want to grow your business, right? Well, yes, exactly. And you want to grow your business. So the fact that the NCAA canceled March Madness is gone. We're going to still work with the NCAA, and we hope next year at March Madness we come out.
It'll be
blazing.
Really March
It'll be
Madness.
Really March Madness.
Yeah.
All of us are going, hey, my bracket, I can't wait. But the NHL depends on how this coronavirus plays out over the next couple months, they may have some of their playoffs. They may have a way to do that, and we're working with them. And if they do that, we will be a part of that, and we would be excited to continue to leverage that relationship.
So what would you say is the thing that is most misunderstood about your business at this point? I mean, haircuts, you can't take them online, so you don't need to worry about Amazon necessarily getting into your business.
We hope not.
Yeah, you hope not.
Yeah.
And believe me, as someone who is a Great Clips, longtime Great Clips customer, I've tried it at home. Even with my complete or almost total lack of hair, I still look better if I have a professional do it. But what's a challenge that we don't fully understand?
Wait, you get your haircut like every week or every 2 weeks? Yeah.
What's that, a number 2 or 3 all over?
It's a 1.5.
Okay, all right, good. Well, I'm not a stylist, but I was close.
Yeah,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's a little long right now.
Clipper guards, Carol. We're talking about clipper guards. Right.
Carol's like, what do these numbers mean?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, our business is it's an awesome business because we deal with everyday people.
You started as a franchisee.
I started as a franchisee. I was 27 years old in 1988. I had salon number 150, and now we have over 4,500. Wow. So I've seen Great Clips grow and expand, and I've been there not at the start, but when we were young, kind of the frontier days, and now we're very well established. And so last year we did 112 million haircuts. This year 115, 120 million haircuts. We touch people. Interesting stat. Last year we had 36 million unique customers come in. So out of the U.S. and Canada, that's almost 10% of the population was a unique customer to Great Clips. And we're just this small little franchise system out of the heartland that's the biggest hair care chain in North America, but basically the world.
2 quick questions. How sticky is it? Once you get a customer, how long do they stay with you? And how much, does it then extend to the broader family and that kind of thing? And your app, how does that help in driving business? Because digital is...
Jason loves the app. So the first part, we track our customers. Every customer comes in, we know when they come in, we know when they come back. We track if they come back within a set period of time. We know that that's important to growth. We know when people come in and then don't come back on their cycle, which means they probably went to a competitor. So how do we market to them? We know a customer comes in 7 or more times a year. We call them a great customer. Is awesome. They're probably coming to us for every one of their haircuts. Thank you, Jason. And so we track all that because we have the data, and that is very important to us. Again, we're a haircut, but we innovate around that haircut with technology, and we know our customers, and so the app can totally change our business. We have 12.5 million downloads of the app right now. We do about 2.5, 3 million downloads a year, but it's really that you can check your wait times, and then you can get on the wait list. So on your time, you burn up any weight that you have versus sitting in our salons.
That was the brilliant. That's the brilliance of it is the wait time.
Yeah, and the key for us, and Carol, to your point, is
5 seconds.
The algorithm works. That's the key to online check-in.
All right, you're going to have to come back and see us. We got a lot more questions for you. Really appreciate the visit. Steve Hockett, CEO of Great Clips.
And good luck through everything, because I know it's a tough time for everybody. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. For that, back over to San Francisco and Ed Baxter. A lot of headlines coming out of the West Coast now.
Yeah, for sure. And Carol, tell Jason that my puppies use a number 4.
Nicely done, Ed.
France President Emmanuel Macron has ordered the school system closed from nursery to university the beginning of next week, saying this is an epidemic of the century. Disney closing its Southern California park through the end of the month. U.S. top infectious doctor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has admitted to a congressional panel today the nation's testing is failing.
The idea of anybody getting it easily, the way people in other countries are doing it, we're not set up for that. Do I think we should be? Yes, but we're not.
Now, the president saying the testing is going smoothly. He has announced a cancellation of his campaign rally, saying that he would prefer to remain in Washington, D.C. during the crisis. The EU is not happy about the president's announcement of a travel ban. Bloomberg's Guy Johnson says top administrators were definitely caught off guard.
This was a unilateral action taken by the White House at a time when global financial markets and global politicians are calling for coordination. This was the exact opposite of that.
And the president says it was just a matter of timing.
We get along very well with the European leaders, but we had to make a decision, and I didn't want to take time of...
He says things will definitely be fine, but Bloomberg's Kevin Surley says there's confusion about what the final ban will be. Mixed messages.
They're also calling for there to be some type of congressional vehicle, bipartisan congressional vehicle with an economic package, whether that's a stimulus, whether that's a tax break. We just don't know at this point.
And he says Congress is waiting. Meanwhile, crowds have been prohibited in Congress, but Congress will definitely be in session next week. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Ed, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Can we just go back? Sorry, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Peloton. This is a big deal. We sort of glossed over it.
In the grand scheme, listen, come.
Here's the thing.
It is a big deal, but in the grand scheme of everything that's going on, it's expected.
It is expected, but here is...
Sorry, I'm supposed to hide my face when I have those kind of expressions.
Really, wow. Everybody on YouTube is like, oh, is this the look
Listen, I love Peloton, full transparency, but I mean, with everything that's going on...
But here's what you didn't let me finish.
Well, I sometimes don't.
Sometimes that happens. My point is that I really think this is the sort of thing, like... We see the big headlines around NCAA tournament. We just talked about March Madness. We think about the big headlines. When you think about what it actually means to limit the gatherings of people in a city like New York City, this is a really interesting example of that. And Broadway's closed. We're going to talk about that in just a second. This is going to, these sorts of cancellations are going to radically change things. Because you think about people not showing up to New York City.
Right. Well, absolutely. The New York City economy, get ready for it. No. I was going to actually give you a gift. What I'm saying is, and I've been saying this throughout our broadcast, is we're looking for leadership right now, right? And you see mayors doing it, governors doing it. And I think as CEOs are doing it, they're being responsible and saying, okay, so how do we mitigate this? We can't stop it. We cannot contain it at this point. And so to see Peloton and others come out and say, this isn't responsible for us to do, and bring a gathering of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And so kudos to them and to everybody else.
That's the gift.
What?
That's the gift to me. You know, I'm so grateful to you.
Happy Thursday, Jason Kelly.
Thank you.
It's not just about the Bloomberg News quiz. It's about that gift to you. I know.
The Bloomberg News quiz.
This should be a good one.
That's coming up. All right. We may have to compete on that off air.
We will. We always
really
do.
Should do that
he beats me all the time. He's just that. He's fast.
Not as much as I'd like. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser, right here on Bloomberg Radio. Broadway Talk coming up next.
All right, coming up, Bloomberg Pursuits brought to you by Carnegie Hall and the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and Chorus performing Beethoven's Missa Solemnis. That's on April 4th. For tickets, visit carnegiehall.org.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to stat pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Adults has prediabetes. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Carnage on Wall Street. U.S. stocks sank in the worst day since Black Monday back in 1987. S&P down 260 points today, now at 2480, down 9.5%. S&P smoldering 27% below record set barely 3 weeks ago. The Dow plunged 2,352 points. That was a drop of 10%. NASDAQ plunged 750 points, down by 9.4%. Stick around to find out how Asian markets react tonight. The 10-year up 20-30 seconds, the 0.80%. Gold little changed, up 26 cents the ounce at $15.76. And we had West Texas Intermediate crude down 4.5%. WTI 31.50 a barrel. Recapping, S&P 500 index down 260 points, a drop there of 9.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much for that update. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio, watching us on YouTube, and this is Bloomberg.
Broadway, dark. It's just that simple. A state of emergency declared by New York City, a ban on public gatherings of a certain size, and that means no shows. And for more on that, we turn to Joe Domanowitz. He is a reporter for Bloomberg Pursuits. He joins us on the phone from New York City. And we thought this might happen. Obviously, people were worried about these large gatherings of people on the Great White Way, Joe. But now it's over, at least for now. What do you make of it?
Well, at least there's certainty. Everybody was sort of bracing for the worst, and I think the worst came today with the announcement that if you have a gathering of 500-plus people, which is the very nature of a Broadway house, 500-plus, you don't have a show. And so, 30 Broadway shows have gone dark, as have many other, institutions across the city. But, we've been sort of bracing for this and, preparing for it, trying to scrub things and sanitize and wash our hands. But the whole thing is you take coronavirus, which is about social distancing, and you take Broadway, which by its very nature is bringing people together, and those things are just going to clash. So that's how the plot thickened today.
I don't know what this says about Jason and me, but we were talking in a break because both of us had been kind of having conversations, I think, at home. We're thinking about, I'm assuming there's not going to be a lot of folks going to Broadway, and I wonder if I'm going to get a bargain in terms of a seat. I mean, they were considering, right? A lot of shows were considering cutting prices dramatically.
Oh, definitely. Scott Rudin came in. He's a smart producer, and he has some hit shows. He's got To Kill a Mockingbird. You could see it for $50, as West Side Story and Book of Mormon, these shows that you want to see, but we're not going to be able to see because they typically sell out. He came in early this week. He slashed the prices on remaining seats through the end of March as a preemptive strike. You know, he said he doesn't want his cast playing to velvet seats. But, you know, in the end, I think that was not to be.
And so give us some historical perspective here, Joe. You know, we've been looking for historical analogs for just about everything, whether it's the stock market, sports teams, whatever it is. This is not the first time Broadway has been shut down. What do you compare it to, knowing that we don't know exactly what this ultimately will be?
Well, this is a long, you know, you talk about long runs on Broadway. This is a long closure on Broadway. You know, you can look back after 9/11, or you can look back after Sandy, when Broadway had shuttered and closed down, but for just a few days. So I don't know what the outcome will be. This is a full month. We're not going to be back in business. Broadway won't be back in business till April 12th. So, you know, producers that I talk to are just, you know, looking and hoping that they could ride it out. One producer who has a show that's doing very well on Broadway and it has established its brand and has money in the bank, you know, she's not concerned. While she can't speak for other productions, it's going to be an individual case. You know, this is a time of the season when a lot of these shows are just getting up on their legs. Right. April is a huge opening month. That's such a, you know, precious and precarious time. How do you establish yourself? And this is just sort of like a big break in the momentum. So you ask what you can compare it to. Yes, we've had Broadway has gone dark, but not for this long. So I think everybody is going to be eager to see what happens come April 12th. Let's have another conversation. We'll just see what's happening.
Right. And just one quick question, just really quickly if you can, because I know there's something funky going on with your phone for our listeners. What happened to the workers? Do they get paid if there's no shows?
Well, I don't know how that all works. I don't know if actors are paid if they don't work. I mean, I think what happens is theater owners and producers, they'll probably be trying to, you know, lawyers are going to be getting their hand sanitizer and getting down to work and talking about insurance and that kind of thing. Yeah. But I don't know what kind of provisions. And again, you know, this is sort of a remarkable case. I don't know what to compare it to. This is across the board.
Got it.
You know, that's 30 shows. All those people and their stage and all the, you know, the union people probably have their own thing happening, but, you know, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to leave it there, and we look forward to checking in with you when it all gets back up and running. Hopefully that April 12th date.
That's a long time.
It is. Joe Domanowitz is a writer for Bloomberg Pursuits. He joined us on the phone from New York City. Dark on Broadway tonight.
Yep. Daybreak Asia coming up, though, with Doug Krisner. You guys have
exhausting stuff. I thought that tone was actually the score to some Broadway musical. If there had been a quiz, I would have failed. I would have not known what that was from.
God, it was nuts, right? Listen, we have been just, you know, the headlines have been coming fast and furiously. I am curious about how the Asian markets open up.
It's going to be very tricky. You know, one of the things that was interesting today, in spite of the sell-off and the move by the ECB not to cut rates, we had a weaker euro, a much stronger dollar here. Now, that typically is a big negative for the European markets, particularly when you consider the fact that there is a lot of dollar-denominated debt held in Asia. But you can't lose sight of the fact that this was a huge down day for the equity market. That's going to create some disastrous tailwinds for Asia. The yen didn't strengthen by that much. We're at 104.89. We don't have the active futures contract yet trading for the Nikkei, but it's going to be, we could be down 1,000 points, I think.
Well, you know,
have you seen anything like this before? I just keep asking people. Like I'm searching for an analog.
There's more risk in walking around on the surface of the planet right now, and I think that the market just wanted to take the risk that it's capable of managing. You know, where can you manage risk, right? We can manage it in the securities industry. We'll just take all the risk out. It's maybe more risky just walking the planet right now. You're talking about analogs, and I was thinking, what's the right analog for a virus?
What is it?
It's not a living thing. It's a biological agent, and it needs cells in which to grow. And I was thinking fire.
fire because it needs to have fuel. And without fuel, fire can't exist. So what we're challenged with right now is removing the fuel from the fire, and this is really what I think everybody is struggling with. If you take all of that fuel away, what does it do to the economy?
Actually, that's perfect. I don't know, there's Mike Regan who made that too, that it doesn't matter, just as you think you get your handle on something, something else pops up, right? You can't really control it. It was Mike Regan, that it was very much analogous to a fire and out of control, and how do you kind of rein it in? And I think that's what's certainly weighing on the markets. I think Asia tonight, what happened